Hi, welcome to episode 488 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where this episode and every episode show notes will be. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarns and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? Welcome to episode 488. It is Monday, August 26th. We are almost done with August. I just don't know where the month went. And I hope that you are doing well. I don't have a ton to show you today because right after we spoke last week, the next morning I went to my physical therapy appointment and we decided that I was going to give my wrist a rest. So I did no more knitting and spinning last week after I talked to you. So today, what I have for you is a little bit of quilting progress, or actually quite a bit of quilting progress, and then I will talk to you about my next embroidery project, which I thought about starting this weekend, but didn't end up starting this weekend. So both quilting and embroidery are a little bit easier on my arm. For whatever reason, they don't trigger quite the same muscles, so it's okay for me to do a little bit of those, and so that was kind of what I decided to focus on over the weekend, and I got a lot done, particularly on quilting. So let me show you what I am working on. So the last time I talked to you, I think I had started to sew together the top and I was talking about chain piecing of my Around the World quilt, which was a red and white quilt that I had put together out of half square triangles. Well, so I finished piecing the top and I had finished that actually before I came and talked to you last week, although I don't think I brought it and showed you. So what I needed to do this week was I needed to go ahead and sandwich, or maybe I sandwiched the quilt together last weekend. I can't remember. So what I needed to do was take the finished top and sandwich it together with some batting and backing fabric and quilt that. So basically sew through all three layers in some kind of design, and then trim it down and add some binding and sew the binding. And I am finished with everything except I am hand sewing the binding down now. So when I decided that I wanted to quilt this quilt, I am still fairly new to quilting and I'm still kind of deciding what kinds of things I want to do with my machine. The quilt ended up being, I haven't actually measured it, but it is somewhere less than 40 inches. I think at max it would have been 40 if I had gotten all my quarter-inch seams correct, and I'm sure I did not. So my guess is it's somewhere between 38 and 40 inches, although I haven't measured. I probably should have, but when I was calculating the binding, I basically needed a certain number of strips, and the number of strips would not have changed. So yeah. So what I did is I started to think about what I might want to do with the quilt. And in the past, I have shown you on my first quilt, which was a Halloween quilt, quite a while ago, I did some free motion quilting where I kind of worked on loops and twists and turns and kind of meandering and going back and forth, and I really, really liked that one. And when it came time to do the next quilt, which was one of the charity quilts that I was doing, I did that again, but for some reason the bobbin thread on my machine was having a little trouble with tension, and particularly on the curves, the tension was very off. So when I went to do the second of the charity quilts, which was almost the same as the first, I went ahead and sort of did the same thing, but rather than doing curly cues and loops, what I did was I did straight lines, and that helped the tension quite a bit on the bobbin side, so on the back side, so that things weren't quite as taut and odd looking, where the stitches didn't kind of pull through to the back as much. So I went ahead and did that for my last quilt, and then I got to this quilt, and if you remember, this quilt was made of all half square triangles, and I arranged them sort of in diamond shapes to echo in red and white. And what I couldn't decide was exactly how I wanted to quilt. I had a cream colored thread, which was going to blend in with the white bits, but not as much with the red bits, although the fabrics were basically cream with red detailing and then red with cream detailing. And so and then the backing was a bright green, because I had kind of thought this might be, it's not really a Christmas quilt in the sense that like it's not It's not particularly festive, it's not festive fabrics, it's not like a holiday theme, but I thought since it was red and white and I wasn't really sure what kind of backing I wanted to use, that maybe I would use a green backing and binding, and it could kind of be my holiday quilt. I could put it up in December and it could be kind of fun. And I will show you the quilt, I just have it here and I don't want to give away too much too fast because I want to talk a little bit about it. So I was trying to decide what I wanted to do and whether I wanted to free motion quilt or what kind of quilting I wanted to do. And so a tutorial caught my attention last week. As part of my day job, I follow some quilters, and one of the people that I follow who does a lot of free motion quilting is Leah Day, and she had this tutorial about spiral quilting, and I was like, oh, that would be so cool, because if you remember, I kind of had a diamond and it was offset, and then it kind of echoes out from there, and I thought it would be kind of fun to like play with the fact that that was a square, but that I could do a spiral in a circle. So I looked up Leah Day's tutorial, and then I also found a tutorial by Krista Watson, who is Krista Quilts. And she talked about building a spiral out on a quilt and how it doesn't need to be perfect, but she also talked about practicing. So what I brought is my practice, and it's not very good, so let's just get that out of the way. What she suggested was that you take something in a circle and you trace that circle. So this is the bottom of a compressed air can because I was using it to clean out my bobbin tray, and the drop-in for the bobbin because it was all full of gunk and fuzz and schmutz and everything that I needed to get out of there. So she suggested that you trace the circle and then you start to trace where you're going to go with your spiral. Now you can see that my spiral is very jerky. I have lots of parts where I kind of got off the line and whatnot, but she has you kind of follow it around. And as you can see, as you get a little further away, it doesn't look as bad. It's not great, but it doesn't look as bad. So this was kind of my practice piece. And this was just a piece that I had put together. I had already done some quilting on it. You can see I'd already done some straight line quilting on it. This was a practice piece when I was playing with pot holders and trying to put them together. And so it's got two layers of batting, or sorry, a layer of batting plus a layer of thermal batting, which is supposed to help with heat for hot pads. And then I just had bits of fabric, Christmas fabric on both sides. And I started on this side because I thought it would be easier to see. This side is harder to see. Now, this side actually proves a little bit of what Krista was saying, which is unless there are threads hanging there, even if you're kind of in a wonky spiral from further away, it doesn't really show. So that was kind of fun. But this proved to be kind of thick for my walking foot. It was a lot of layers. And I also got some pleats and like a little bit of folding and things shifted a little bit. So it wasn't the best, but again, this was just practice and I just keep these around so I can kind of practice things on them. But I wasn't 100% sold on this. And I was talking to one of my friends about it. And she said, why don't you just echo some of the lines in the quilting, like the squares, and build it out from there? And so I thought, you know, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe it'll be simple and easy. And actually, it really, really was. So without further ado, here is the current status of my quilt. Let me find the little bit that I want to show you at the corner. Okay, so, oh, and of course this is the corner that's not finished. So this is the top corner, and like I said, this is where you get those squares. And what I have done is in all the white bits, or all the cream bits, I have gone ahead and I used my walking foot to kind of echo the lines here. Now, these are approximately 3/8 of an inch away, and I only know that because what I did is I put on my quilting foot, I put on my walking foot, which is a foot that actually has feed dogs beneath it. So basically, normally on a sewing machine, you have a basic like sewing machine presser foot that kind of holds the fabric down. And then you have the feed dogs, which are those little sawtoothed metal parts in the bottom of it's the part that covers up the bobbin and that you rest your, where you pull the fabric through under the needle. The feed dogs are those little sawtoothed edges, and what they do is they move when your sewing machine is moving, and they help pull the quilt fabric through. Now with a walking foot, they add a second set of feed dogs, so a second set of those little sawtooth bits under the presser foot, so it kind of pulls the top and the bottom through at the same speed, and that is supposed to give you a much more even stitch, and you're supposed to use that when you're doing multiple layers. So when you've got a top and a backing and a batting. And so what I did is I set the needle in the center of my walking foot, and then I put the edge of the walking foot right against the edge here. So the edge of the walking foot, and there was about 3/8 of an inch between them. And so you can see that on the center one, I just did one line there. But on the other sections, what I did is I did 2 lines. So I did one right close to the first edge of the red, and then I did one right close to the second edge of the red. So what this created was a bunch of squares, and you can see on the back, it's not very densely quilted, and I might have done more quilting if this was actually going to be a bed quilt that somebody was going to use each night, but this is going to hang on the wall. So I'm not concerned about the fact that there's not a lot of dense quilting, and there is enough quilting that it holds the layers in place so that they're not slipping and things aren't happening. So that is kind of the back of the quilt. And as you can see, the white thread against the green, it does stand out a little bit. It's not terrible. It's not like the most beautiful. I probably should have found a green thread for the bottom, for the bobbin. But I went ahead and just did it with the cream on the white. And so as you can see, I've basically finished quilting the quilt. Oof. So let me stand up here. So this is the quilt, and that is, I showed you that as I was working through the process. And then, like I said, what I did is I put kind of a pine green on the back, and this is, it's called Stonehenge. It's kind of a stone textured, it looks like concrete or cement or a little something, and it's definitely a semi-solid. It's got like lots of variation in it, but it's all greens. And then what I did is I did my binding in that thin green stretch around, and you can see I have sewed a portion of the binding on. So I'll just show you this corner. Oof. Oof, my chair doesn't roll on carpet very well. So this corner, I've already finished sewing the binding, so that is how it will look. And you can see what I did is I just hand sew the binding on the back, and there you can see the green is kind of bright on there, but it's not terrible. And so that is kind of the finished part of the quilt. So what I did is I quilted the quilt with all those lines, and honestly, that took me almost no time at all, which is crazy. It took me like about an hour, hour and a half, in one short afternoon. And when I free motion quilt, it usually takes me 5 or 6 bobbins, and it takes me 15 to 20 minutes per bobbin, and it's just a lot of work kind of pushing the quilt around and moving it back and forth, and it uses a lot of thread, and this took like 1.5 bobbins. And I was done in almost no time, and my lines are not 100% straight, and the other issue is that sometimes here it's pretty good, my points line up, but my points don't always line up in this quilt because I didn't trim as carefully as I should, but it is, the lines are fairly straight because I was able to keep the edge of that presser foot against the edge of the red. So even in the case where they didn't line up, like you can see that here, where my points did not line up, I kind of was able to keep it semi-straight in there and still just echo those kind of diamond shapes. So all I have left now is I have about 1.5 sides of the quilt left to finish, and I'm just holding it the binding in place with these quilting clips. And I'll be making sure that all of my threads get tucked in and ended. And actually, I found a very tiny, when I was a kid, my grandmother put together a sewing kit for me, and she put it together in a tackle box. And I still have the tackle box, and it's still kind of my sewing kit. And one of the things that she did is she bought me this package of probably 25 or 50 itty bitty tiny spools of thread in like a rainbow of colors, and I probably still have like half of them because most of the time you don't need thread in a rainbow of colors, but I have used them over the years to sew buttons onto sweaters. You know, it's not enough. I mean, they're really tiny little things. I mean, if they had like 10 yards of thread, I would be super surprised. It's just a little bit of thread. It's almost like a mini sewing kit, but a little bit more thread than that. Anyway, I was going through looking to see if I had any thread because I didn't have any green thread when I was sewing, hence why I ended up with the white thread. And actually I found some green thread. I found a green in there. So I've been using the green to sew the binding on the back so that you don't see it so much. So you might be able to see, I don't know if you can see, I've hand sewn all of that, and there's like just a little bit of green thread right there, and it almost matches perfectly. So I have another like side and a half to sew, and I will probably do that tonight. This is just perfect like in front of the TV sewing, because I don't really have to be super careful, but there is kind of a great way to stitch so that the stitches don't really show and it holds the binding in place, and it's just perfect. And I machine sewed the binding to the front of the quilt, and then I'm just hand sewing it, folding it around the back. Technically, there is a way that you can sew the binding to the back of the quilt and then fold it around the front and then sew there, but you have to be very precise in your sewing, because you want to sew like basically almost at the edge of the quilt, but not at the edge of the quilt. And I do not do that well on a machine, so this is a much better task for me to do it by hand. So that is kind of the finishing work that I'll be doing on this week, and then I will pop it in the washing machine with some color catchers to give it a good wash, and it'll get all floofy and almost a little bit crinkly, although it won't get super crinkly because of the fact that I did some minimal quilting and all the seams that I have here, but I'm excited. And then I don't think I'll put it on my wall right now because I have the Halloween quilt on the wall. The Halloween quilt has been on the wall since I finished it in like early spring, no, fall last year, January, I don't even remember. But it's almost Halloween time, so I'm gonna leave it there. Speaking of which, I know what I didn't start with, so we'll go back in just a second. Anyway, so that is my quilt. This pattern where you kind of work out from the center and arrange your half square triangles this way, I have heard it called an around the world quilt. Mine is not quite typical. The kind of traditional around the world quilt has a diamond block in the center, and then everything radiates outward from there. This is just maybe a slightly more modern interpretation to have it kind of off to the side so that it radiates out from there. But so that is my almost finished quilt, and I'm very pleased with it, and it will be going up on the wall, but I think not until after Halloween. So I will take some finished pictures of it out on my deck, and then I will kind of hold on to it, and it will probably be my between Halloween and the end of the year quilt. Although I don't know, maybe I won't put it up till after Thanksgiving, like when you put up a Christmas tree. So that is my quilting journey this week. Since I was talking about Halloween, I actually forgot to go through the tea because I just led into that right away. I am drinking tea today, and I decided, even though it is only August 26th, I decided to pull out my Hello Kitty Halloween mug. This one only usually comes out in October, but I decided, you know what? It is not a fall day. It is well over 100 degrees. It is almost, well, actually, I haven't checked. It was supposed to be over 100 today, and the heat index was supposed to be 110. That is Fahrenheit. But it was supposed to be very unpleasant here today. So it is definitely not a fall day, but I decided that I was going to get into the fall spirit a little early. And what I am drinking is a mix of two teas because I had a tiny bit left in 2 bags of tea, and there wasn't enough for 1 full cup in either of them, so I mixed them. So I mixed a black tea, and then I mixed it with the last little bit of this mango fruit punch from David's Tea that I bought quite a while ago. It is pineapple slices, mango, orange peel and slices, tangerine, safflower, marigold, strawberry, and some other flavoring. So that is what I have in here, but it's also black tea, so it's got some caffeine. And this is my little Hello Kitty spider mug. So I guess what I'm saying is bring on fall. So the other thing that I thought about starting this weekend and then just didn't end up quite getting my you-know-what together is I decided that I wanted to start a series of embroideries. I can't remember if I had this discussion. I found a seller on Etsy who does these absolutely beautiful sort of color monochromatic, not exactly monochromatic, sort of the semi-solid version of color studies, that's what I will call them, color studies for each month of the year. And so each month of the year is formatted for an 8-inch embroidery hoop, and it has a fairly intricate design, and it's all done in shades in the same family. So, for instance, 1 month is all in reds, like a light red and a dark red, and 1 month is in oranges, a light orange and a dark orange. 1 month is in kind of a forest green, and, well, I'll show you today, forest green and kind of a sage or minty green, light blue, dark blue, teals, purples, yellows, bright greens, and I thought that the designs actually were done in multiple shades of the same color, and it turns out they're only done in 2. So the designer is, it's called, gosh, I don't even know, because I can't read the signature. The designer and shop it's an Etsy shop, so it will be linked in the show notes under embroidery. And it has a name, and then it says Bco Productions. And currently there is a bundle for the first 8 months of the year, and they will be adding more as time goes on. And I went ahead and bought the bundle early. If you want to wait, you could buy the bundle at the end of the year, because there is a little bit of savings for buying all of them in one, but they're not all published yet. And this is this year's batch. You could also get a different batch from a previous year. You could buy all 12 of them. But so I went ahead and bought the first 8, figuring I can buy the last 4 later in the year, just because I was ready to get started. I didn't want to wait. So I found these, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do, because I kind of wanted to do all 12, because it's just going to be like a rainbow, a beautiful rainbow of color. And my husband suggested, he's so smart sometimes, now I know why I keep him around. He suggested I love him, but I also keep him around for that. He suggested that maybe I should embroider all 12, and then I should turn those squares into some kind of quilt. And the jury is still a little bit out on how I'm going to turn it into a quilt. I haven't decided. But because I needed to not knit and spin, and I needed something to do, I decided that I was going to go ahead and order some supplies and get started. And I have this great big box of embroidery floss, and so my thought was that for quite a few of the months I probably won't even need to buy any floss, and for some of the months I may need to buy a few more in certain color areas, but we'll kind of take that as it comes. So I went to go pull everything out to work on the project. And for a little while, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do the project on it, but then I just decided that I was going to do it on Kona Cotton white squares. And I happen to have a package of 10-inch squares, which will be fine for an 8-inch design. It might be a little tight in the hoop, but it'll be fine because the 8-inch design will fit on there. And so I was like, great, perfect, let's pull this out and start. So the first problem that I had is I did not have an 8-inch hoop. I have a 7-inch hoop, I have a 6-inch hoop, I have a 4-inch hoop. I did not have an 8-inch hoop. And I decided that I didn't really want to, I guess I could have started before the 8-inch hoop got here, but I decided that I really wanted to buy the correct size hoop, because the issue is you can move the square around so that you can work on different portions of it, but I didn't want to like crunch any of the sections in the hoop if I was working with a smaller hoop. So I went ahead and I thought I ordered a hoop, but I did not. And then I thought about the fact that the last design that I did, I bought some of that transfer paper, but I forgot to buy the sticky transfer paper. And these designs are pretty intricate. And so I bought some sticky paper and waited for the sticky paper and the hoop to arrive. So the sticky paper arrived on Friday, and I was like, great, I can start on this weekend. And then when I went back and looked, I hadn't actually placed the order for the hoop. So the hoop wasn't here. So again, I probably should have gone ahead and started in a smaller hoop, and I could have worked on the center section and then waited, but you know, hindsight, whatever. I wanted everything to start the project at the same time. So I ordered the hoop, and it arrived late yesterday, and so I printed out my transfer, and then I printed it on the wrong side, so it's now printed on the backing, not on the front, which is when it needs to be printed on so I can put it on the hoop. So I need to reprint that today, but I am ready to start tonight. So, or I might finish my quilt tonight and then I'll start tomorrow night. So January's design is very winter themed. It's not exactly Christmas, but it is definitely winter themed still. When the world is in a dark, snowy place, there's lots of snowflakes, there's reindeer, and there are lots of fir trees and branches and things like that, and the days are very short. So this is the design, and this right here is the company. That's why I'm having problems deciphering what it actually says. Like I said, the actual link will be in the show notes, which are on my website, thecornerofknitandtea.com, so you can find them on Etsy. And this is the design. As I said, it is printed on the glossy side of the paper. It needs to be printed on the matte kind of fabric-y side of the paper. And then partially last night I was like, oh, this will still work. No, it won't, because I have to peel the backing off so that I'm not very bright sometimes, folks. Anyway, so I need to run this. This is paper that can run through your printer, so I just need to run it through the printer again, cut out the circle, and then I can attach it to my fabric and then pop it in my hoop. So the last thing that I wanted to show you is I just wanted to show you what colors I'm using. So each of these designs, like I said, they're fairly intricate, and each of these designs uses 2 colors. And what I decided is that on many of them, I'm going to use more than 2 colors, because even if I had 2 colors that I wanted to use, in order to be able to do like a full coverage design like this, because all these trees are not just outlines, these trees are all satin stitched in order to do designs like this, I would probably need more than one Hank bundle, skein, whatever you want to call it, of the embroidery floss colors. And what I decided is I'm just going to use the colors that I have. And so some of them I'm going to use many colors, and some of them I'm not going to use that many. So what I did is, this one is very kind of spruce fir colored. So it's like dark forest green, sagey green, blues, things heading that direction. And I went ahead and pulled a whole bunch of different flosses out of my box that I want to use. So the first couple that I started with were, let me start with the ones that sort of inspired the theme, and these are all, okay, so these are literally all in the same family. A lot of the way that DMC does floss is if they do like 3 colors, if they do a light, a medium, and a dark, they're kind of all in a row. So these were the 3 that I started with, which is, and I'm not going to read all these numbers, but the reason I know is because this is 502, 503, 501, 502, 503. So these are the 3 that I started with, and then I started building in around them, because I have this one, which is a little bit greeny bluer, but still kind of goes. And then I have this one, which is a little bit greeny bluer, but a little bit lighter, kind of on the lighter end. And then I have a whole bunch of these foresty greens, which I think will be great for the trees. And then I have a couple more that are like foresty green, but a little bit blue. And then finally I have this one. This is very blue. And so I will add maybe very sparingly, maybe a couple of the snowflakes. So I have all these colors. Let's see if I can just kind of arrange these in a, it's very hard to hold these all at once, but let's see if I can kind of arrange these. So these are the colors that I'm going to use for my first one. And my hope is that this will be enough floss to get through everything. And honestly, the only thing that I'm going to be kind of a stickler for is that I definitely want it to be mirror image. So for the things that are like definitely mirror image, I'm just going to make sure that I use threads that I have enough of that I can do the mirror image thing. So, and then the only other thing I was thinking about is whether or not I should make the cardinals red. That was the only thing I was trying to decide, and I don't think so. I think I'm going to keep it all green, but I did wonder if like a cute little pop of red on those cardinals would be kind of interesting, just to kind of emphasize. But of course that would make it look like Christmas, and this is January, so maybe not. So that is the first one that I'm going to work on, and my hope is that I will have that started by the next time I see you, and we'll be able to share that with you as I go along. And because there are 12 of them, it's going to take me a while to do them all. I expect that this project will take me quite a few months. I don't know if it will take me a whole year, because I might go a little faster, but we'll just have to see, and then eventually I will get to figure out how I want to set them into a quilt. So that is where I'm at. A minor update, my wrist and arm actually do feel better, and the swelling is down, so not using it was probably a good thing. I'm hoping I'm not going to have to do that for another week, but if that is the case, I already have my next quilt picked out, and all the fabric is on my dining room table and ready to be started. I've done all the mathy calculations that I need to for the cuts that I need to make. And I have like everything I need for the top, and then I also have the backing. I don't know if I have enough batting. I didn't make a Franken batting on this quilt. I went ahead and used something that I had. So when I finish the top for the next quilt, I'll have to lay out all the scraps and bits and pieces that I have and see if I can make a quilt out of them. And if not, I'll just have to order some batting, but that's not really a big deal. So I have my next quilt kind of on the go. And then I have an embroidery project that will be ready to be on the go. And for now, I'm going to focus on those 2 things. I do have some chickens to work on, so if I get to have a little knitting time, that's probably where I'll start. And then I will go back and try and finish that the hipster top that I was working on, because now it's just knitting in the round. So I hope that you had a lovely weekend and are set for a nice week. The front of the week is going to be beastly here. It's just going to be hot and gross. And then the latter half of the week is going to be nice and cool. We're going to get some rain. I am driving up to work headquarters on Thursday, which will be kind of fun. So I work remote, but I work for Missouri Stock Quilt Company, which has 16 quilt shops in town, plus a variety of other eateries and things. And it is almost 2 hours from my house, so I don't go frequently, but every so often I do go up for some meetings or to chat with some people. And it also gives me, it's almost like a little field trip and a good chance to head up there. I'm going to try not to shop in the stores because A, I can shop all the time, and B, I do not need more fabric, but we shall see how that goes. So I am going to wrap up here. I hope that you have a lovely coming week ahead. I will chat with you next Monday. Next Monday is a holiday here in the United States. It is Labor Day. I will be off work. My hope is that I will have lots of crafty time over the weekend and even on Monday, and then I will be able to hang out with y'all and tell you a little bit about what I'm working on. So until I see you next time, happy knitting, happy spinning, quilting, embroidering, any kind of crafting, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.